The Great Pyramid of Giza holds a secret in its stones. This video unlocks a profound mystery, the hidden connection between ancient architecture and the mathematics of natural proportions. We will journey across continents and centuries, from the Parthenon's columns to the heart of Gothic cathedrals, to uncover a forgotten code. By the end, you will possess a completely new lens through which to see human history, revealing a sophistication that rivals our own. How did builders thousands of years ago embed sacred ratios like the golden section into stone without modern tools? And why would a temple's design mirror the spiral of a seashell? What does it say about us that we are only now relearning this silent language of the ancients? This silent mathematics of nature is what we call natural proportions. Think of a seashell's elegant spiral, or the way a tree's branches split and reach for the sky. These aren't random shapes. They follow a hidden rulebook written in numbers, a geometry of growth that repeats across the living world. The most celebrated of these rules is the golden ratio. It's a specific relationship, roughly 1.618 to 1. You find it when a line is divided so that the whole length is to the long segment, as the long segment is to the short one. This creates a balance that our eyes and minds instinctively find harmonious, a quiet perfection. But the golden ratio is just one member of a family. There's the Fibonacci sequence, where each number is born from the sum of the two before it, a pattern echoed in pine cones and flower petals. And there are the clean, foundational ratios like 1 to the square root of 2, or 1 to the square root of 3, which govern the proportions of simple shapes and forms. These numbers are not inventions. They are discoveries, the inherent architecture of reality itself. So when we look at an ancient temple and see these same proportions etched in stone, a profound question emerges. Were these master builders deliberate mathematicians using a secret code, or were they simply listening to a deep, intuitive sense of beauty, one that is wired into us by the very world we inhabit? To unlock their monuments, we must first understand this universal language. This silent mathematics whispers from the stones of the Parthenon. Perched atop the Acropolis in Athens, this temple dedicated to the goddess Athena stands as our first profound enigma. For centuries, observers have felt an inexplicable sense of harmony when gazing upon its columns and pediments, a feeling that modern analysis suggests is rooted in number. While the entire facade doesn't conform to a single, simplistic golden rectangle, a closer look reveals something more sophisticated. The ratio of the building's length to its height, the spacing between those majestic columns, even the proportions of its inner chambers, all repeatedly approximate the golden ratio, phi. It's as if the very framework of the structure breathes with this natural proportion. The great debate among historians is whether this was a conscious calculation by the architect Iktinos, working with a codified rule of sacred geometry, or whether it was the intuitive outcome of a cultural pursuit of perfect visual balance. The famed modern architect Le Corbusier observed that the Parthenon is the product of a granite rigor. That word rigor is key. It implies a discipline, a system. This wasn't accidental beauty. It was a deliberate attempt to forge a civic monument that resonated with a deeper cosmic order, to make stone speak the same silent language as the growth of a leaf or the curve of a shell. The Parthenon challenges us to see it not just as a ruin, but as a frozen moment of mathematical philosophy. But if the Parthenon whispers this mathematical language, the Great Pyramid of Giza shouts it in stone. This monument, the oldest of the ancient world's wonders, presents an enigma of staggering precision that has captivated mathematicians for centuries. Its core geometry seems to hold two of the most important numbers in the universe in silent embrace. Take the pyramid's base perimeter, divide it by twice its original height. The result you get is a figure extraordinarily close to pi, the mathematical constant that defines the circle. This is a relationship found in circles, not typically in pyramids. Then consider its face, the slant height of one of its triangular sides, divided by half the length of the base, gives a value that closely approximates the golden ratio, phi. One monument, two profound mathematical constants emerging from its simple, angular form. The question this forces upon us is unavoidable: coincidence or a message carved in limestone for the ages? The meticulous surveys of the Egyptologist Flinders Petrie in the late 19th century provided the exacting measurements that fuel this mystery. His work revealed a precision in the pyramid's construction that seems to defy the era's presumed technological limits. This data led some researchers to propose even grander theories. Could the pyramid's dimensions encode knowledge of the Earth's own measurements, or even the slow, 26,000-year wobble of our planet's axis, known as the precession of the equinoxes? Mainstream scholarship often interprets the pyramid's shape through a symbolic and practical lens. The smooth, sloping sides were seen as the descending rays of the sun god Ra, a ramp for the pharaoh's soul to ascend to the heavens. This is a powerful and valid interpretation. Yet, the persistent, eerie echo of pi and phi within its geometry invites a more nuanced narrative. It suggests we shouldn't force a choice between symbol and science, between theology and mathematics. Perhaps for the ancient builders, these concepts were not separate at all. The pyramid may be the ultimate expression of a sacred geometry, a single, unified system where mathematical truth, astronomical observation, and spiritual belief were woven into one monumental testament to a cosmos governed by divine order. This mathematical language shifts from the angular geometry of pyramids to the perfect circle, found in the windswept plains of Salisbury. Stonehenge speaks a different dialect of the same universal code, one written not just in static ratios, but in the moving proportions of time itself. Its massive sarsen stones are arranged in a circle, a shape with no beginning and no end, symbolizing eternity and the cyclical nature of the cosmos. But this is not a random ring. The proportions of its concentric circles, the diameters of the sarsen circle, and the outer ring of pits known as the Aubrey holes, appear to hold a deliberate relationship. Researchers suggest these proportions may encode knowledge of lunar cycles, tracking the moon's complex 18.6-year journey across the sky, and perhaps even predicting eclipses. The most breathtaking evidence of this celestial intent is in the alignments. On the summer solstice, the sun rises directly over the heel stone, casting its light into the heart of the monument. At the winter solstice, the setting sun perfectly frames between the great trilithons. These are not vague orientations. They are precise, repeatable events built into the very architecture. In the 1960s, astronomer Gerald Hawkins analyzed these alignments and proposed a revolutionary idea that Stonehenge functioned as a kind of Neolithic computer, a stone calendar of immense complexity. While modern archaeology debates the specifics of his calculations, the core insight remains powerful and widely accepted. The builders possessed a profound, observed understanding of celestial mechanics. For them, the most important natural proportions were not merely spatial, they were temporal. The ratio of a day to a year, the rhythm of the seasons, the slow dance of the moon, these were the sacred geometries that governed life, death, and rebirth. By setting these cosmic rhythms in stone, they created a permanent interface between the earthly and the celestial, a place where human ceremony could align with the perceived pulse of the universe. The monument becomes a frozen equation where architecture equals astronomy. From the celestial alignments of Stonehenge, our journey through this hidden geometry leads us to a space that is itself a model of the cosmos. The Roman Pantheon in Rome stands as a breathtaking fusion of raw engineering and profound philosophical ambition. Its design is a masterclass in geometric purity, a single, monumental idea rendered in concrete and light. The building is a perfect cylinder crowned by a perfect hemisphere, a dome that is exactly as high as the cylindrical wall beneath it is tall. This creates a 1-to-1 proportion of immense power. If you could complete the sphere, it would fit snugly inside the entire structure, a world within a world. This is not just an architectural choice, it is a philosophical declaration. In the worldview of the time, the circle and the sphere were considered the most perfect divine shapes, symbols of the heavens and of unity. The Pantheon was literally built as an image of a harmonious, spherical universe. Look up into that vast dome, and you see its surface carved into a grid of sunken panels called coffers. These are not merely decorative, they diminish in size as they rise toward the summit, creating a subtle visual rhythm that pulls your gaze ever upward. This progression may follow a proportional sequence, a mathematical cadence that reinforces the feeling of ascent from the earthly to the celestial. And at the very apex where all lines converge is the oculus, the great eye. This 30-foot wide opening is the building's only source of natural light. It is a stroke of genius that transforms the static architecture into a living clock. Throughout the day, a brilliant shaft of sunlight pours through this eye, sweeping slowly across the interior walls and floor. It marks the hours, the seasons, a moving spotlight from the gods themselves. On significant dates like the spring equinox, the beam of light aligns with the grand entrance in a spectacle of calculated illumination. The identity of the mastermind behind this temple to all gods is shrouded in some mystery, often attributed to the architect Apollodorus of Damascus or perhaps to the Emperor Hadrian, a man deeply fascinated by geometry and cosmic order. Their goal seems to have been nothing less than the construction of a microcosm. They built a scale model of the heavens here on Earth using the immutable language of simple, perfect forms. The Pantheon tells us that for the Romans at their philosophical height, to understand the universe was to grasp its geometry. To create a sacred space was to replicate its proportions. In this silent, sun-drenched rotunda, architecture becomes astronomy, mathematics becomes theology, and a visitor standing on the marble floor is placed, quite literally, at the center of a created world. But how do you translate a cosmic principle into a building plan? The leap from abstract geometry to physical stone required not just vision, but a practical, hands-on toolkit. Master builders across the ancient and medieval world were engineers as much as artists, and their methods reveal a beautiful simplicity. Imagine a vast, empty plot of land designated for a cathedral. Before a single foundation stone is laid, the entire elaborate plan must be drawn at full scale on the ground itself. This was done not with complex machinery, but with humble, powerful tools. A length of rope, a set of wooden pegs, and a measuring rod were the primary instruments. With a peg as a center point and a rope as a radius, a perfect circle could be scribed into the earth. Stretching a rope marked into 12 equal segments could create the foundational square, and for one of the most crucial elements of stable construction, the perfect right angle, they relied on a timeless trick. A rope knotted into a triangle with sides measuring 3 units, 4 units, and 5 units will always form a right angle. This so-called Pythagorean triple was used for millennia before the Greek philosopher gave it his name, from the banks of the Nile to the plains of Mesopotamia. It was practical geometry in its purest form. From these simple beginnings, entire design philosophies grew. Medieval masons spoke of 2 core principles, ad quadratum and ad triangulum, meaning from the square and from the triangle. Starting with a basic square, you could use geometric operations like drawing diagonals or rotating squares to generate a cascade of harmonious proportions and larger forms. A triangle, especially the equilateral triangle seen as a symbol of the divine, could be used in a similar generative way. These were not just architectural shortcuts. They were seen as a process of revelation, unfolding the hidden order of creation through logical steps. The 12th century scholar Hugh of St. Victor captured this world-view perfectly when he wrote that the sensible world is like a book written by the finger of God. For the master mason, the compass and straightedge were his pens. Each line drawn in the dirt or on parchment was an act of reading that divine text, of translating celestial harmony into a blueprint for a sacred space. The construction site itself became a kind of open-air temple to mathematics, where the abstract became tangible, and a rope and peg could whisper the secrets of the universe. That rope and peg geometry reached its most breathtaking expression in the high vaults of the Gothic cathedral. Among these stone prayers, Chartres Cathedral in France stands as a fourth profound enigma, a sermon written in light, stone, and silent number. Its overwhelming verticality, that feeling of being drawn irresistibly upward, is no architectural accident. It is the product of a meticulously calculated proportional system. Look at the cross-section of its nave. The height from the floor to the apex of the vault often relates precisely to the width below through the clean geometry of the equilateral triangle or the square. The entire floor plan frequently unfolds from the dynamic ratio of 1 to the square root of 2, a proportion that creates rectangles of inherent stability and visual tension. And scholars have long argued that the golden section governs the elegant elevation of its western facade and the radiant complexity of its famed rose windows. This was far more than aesthetic preference. As the scholar Otto von Simpson compellingly argued, this mathematical rigor was theological. It was built upon a foundation of Platonic and Augustinian thought, where light and number were seen as the primary manifestations of the divine. Beauty in this worldview was not subjective. It was the tangible reflection of a cosmic order, and to build a beautiful church was to make God's rational mind visible. The revolutionary flying buttress, often seen as a mere structural support, was in fact the key that unlocked this vision. By bracing the walls from the outside, they allowed those walls to soar higher and become almost entirely filled with glass. But the underlying skeleton, the invisible armature holding this vision of heaven together, was a geometric lattice of sacred ratios. The goal was to create a heaven on earth that was not merely symbolic but sensorially overwhelming. When you stand in Chartres, bathed in the kaleidoscopic light of its stained glass, you are not just in a building. You are inside a mathematical diagram of paradise, a space where every line and every beam of colored light was calculated to lift the soul from the earthly to the eternal through the pure, silent language of proportion. While the Gothic cathedral reached for heaven, a different but equally profound vision of cosmic order was being mapped onto the earth in the east. In the ancient traditions of India and Southeast Asia, architecture was conceived not as a structure, but as a living diagram of the universe itself, a sacred machine for spiritual alignment. This philosophy is crystallized in the principle of the mandala. A mandala is far more than a beautiful circular pattern. It is a meticulously structured geometric map, a symbolic representation of the cosmos and the journey of the soul toward enlightenment. This conceptual blueprint became the literal foundation for thousands of temples, governed by ancient architectural texts known as the Vastu Shastras. These texts provide astonishingly detailed instructions, dictating that every temple must begin its life not with a sketch, but with a sacred diagram called the Vastu Purusha Mandala. Imagine a grid of perfect squares like a spiritual chessboard drawn upon the ground. Each square in this grid is not empty. It is considered the dwelling place of a specific deity or cosmic force. The entire temple plan, from its outer walls to the location of its innermost sanctuary, is generated from this diagram. The act of construction is therefore a ritual act of bringing the celestial order down to earth, of installing the gods in their proper geometric seats. This mathematical precision extends upward into the very form of the temple. The towering superstructure known as the shikara is not a free-form sculpture. Its soaring curves and diminishing tiers follow precise proportional formulas described in even older texts, the Shulba Sutras. These sutras are among humanity's earliest known works of geometry, containing complex mathematical knowledge for constructing altars and, by extension, temples. The proportions governing the shikara's height and width create a specific visual rhythm, a crescendo in stone meant to draw the worshipper's gaze and mind upward from the worldly to the divine. Nowhere is this cosmic vision executed on a more breathtaking scale than at Angkor Wat in Cambodia. This vast temple complex is not merely a collection of buildings. It is a staggering cartographic model of the Hindu universe. Its central towers represent the peaks of Mount Meru, the mythical axis of all worlds. The concentric galleries surrounding them symbolize the mountain ranges that ring that cosmic center. And the immense rectangular moat encircling the entire site, that is nothing less than the cosmic ocean at the edge of creation. To walk from the outer gate toward the central sanctuary is to embark on a symbolic pilgrimage from the periphery of reality toward its divine core. Every step is measured, every vista framed by this encoded geometry. Here, proportion transcends aesthetics or even symbolism. It functions as a form of ritual technology. The carefully calculated spaces, the alignments with celestial bodies, the resonant chambers, all are designed to produce a specific effect on human consciousness. The temple becomes an instrument, tuning the individual mind to the fundamental frequencies of a universe believed to be inherently geometric and ordered. In this tradition, to enter the temple is to step inside a functioning mandala, to physically occupy a space where the architecture itself is a guide, silently aligning the human spirit with the perceived mathematical architecture of all that is. The silent stones of Malta hold a fifth, and perhaps most mysterious, architectural enigma. Scattered across these Mediterranean islands are the ruins of temples like Haga Kim and Mnajdra, structures so ancient they predate the Great Pyramid of Giza by 1,000 years. Built from colossal limestone slabs, some weighing many tons, they are arranged in unique, cloverleaf floor plans that feel both organic and intentional. For a long time, they were seen simply as impressive Neolithic ritual sites, but a closer look reveals a sophistication that challenges our assumptions about prehistoric knowledge. The entrance corridor of the Mnajdra temple, for instance, is precisely oriented. On the spring and autumn equinoxes, the first rays of the sun slice directly down this passageway to illuminate a central stone slab. At the solstices, sunlight frames the edges of massive megaliths in the adjacent Haga Kim complex. These are not vague solar markers, they are repeatable, built-in alignments that track the sun's most critical turning points in the year. This suggests the builders possessed not just observational skill, but a need to embed that celestial calendar permanently into their sacred architecture. The mystery deepens when we pull back to view the landscape. Some researchers propose that the distances between these temple complexes are not random. They may form deliberate geometric patterns across the island, triangles or lines that connect sites to significant natural features like hilltops or caves. This idea points toward a large-scale, proportional planning of the entire ritual landscape. It implies a worldview where a single temple was not an isolated entity. It was a node in a greater, invisible network, a point in a sacred geometry drawn across the earth itself. While the evidence here is more debated and less documented than at Stonehenge or Giza, the implication is staggering. It hints at a widespread Neolithic knowledge system, a way of seeing where architecture, astronomy, and the very shape of the land were inseparable parts of a single understanding. The temples of Malta, older than metal tools, ask us to radically expand our definition of mathematics. For these builders, calculation may not have been about abstract numbers on a page. It was a lived, physical practice. It was the act of measuring the sun's path against a horizon, of pacing out distances between holy places, of shaping colossal stones to mirror the cycles that governed their world. Their mathematics was likely a holistic, earth-centered cosmology, where proportion was not just visual harmony, but a means of staying in sync with the fundamental rhythms of life. Their silent, sun-warmed megaliths stand as a profound reminder that the drive to encode cosmic order into stone is a human impulse far older and far more deeply rooted than we often imagine. Time itself was a dimension they measured in stone, while the great monuments we've explored encode static geometric ratios. Many ancient cultures went further, weaving the very movement of celestial bodies into their architecture. Their buildings became more than shelters or symbols. They transformed into colossal, interactive calendars where light and shadow performed a silent, annual dance dictated by the cosmos. This is where proportion becomes dynamic, a living mathematics of the sun and stars. In the arid canyon lands of the American Southwest, the ancestral pueblones of Choco Canyon created one of the most elegant examples. High on Fajada Butte, 3 large stone slabs lean against a cliff face. Behind them, carved into the rock, are 2 precise spiral petroglyphs. For most of the year, these spirals sit in shadow. But on the summer solstice, a dagger of sunlight slices perfectly between the slabs to bisect the larger spiral. On the winter solstice, 2 daggers of light bracket the same spiral. And at the spring and autumn equinoxes, a single shaft of light pierces the center of the smaller spiral. This sun dagger is not a written calendar. It is a built one, an architectural event where the sun itself is the pointer and the stone is the dial. Far to the south, in the cloud-shrouded peaks of the Andes, the Inca engineered a similar marvel. At the heart of Machu Picchu stands the Intihuatana stone, a meticulously carved granite pillar. Its name translates roughly to the hitching post of the sun. This was no abstract sculpture. Its angles and facets were precisely shaped to function as a gnomon, the central element of a sundial. On the equinoxes, the sun would stand almost directly overhead, casting little to no shadow from the pillar, a moment of perfect balance celebrated as the sun being tethered to the earth. Throughout the year, the moving shadow would trace a path, marking the sun's journey and the changing seasons with undeniable clarity. Perhaps the most theatrical of these celestial integrations occurs at Chichen Itza, the great Maya city on the Yucatan Peninsula. The Pyramid of El Castillo, or the Temple of Kukulkan, is a masterpiece of calendrical architecture. Its 4 stairways each have 91 steps, with a top platform that totals 365, one for each day of the solar year. But the true spectacle happens twice annually at the spring and autumn equinoxes. As the sun sets on these days, the stepped corners of the pyramid cast a series of triangular shadows onto the northern balustrade. These interlocking shadows create the undulating illusion of a giant serpent, the feathered god Kukulkan, slithering down from the temple to the earth. This is not an observation post for a priestly elite. It is a public, communal spectacle. The entire city could witness the descent of the divine, a moment where architecture, astronomy, and mythology merged into a single, breathtaking experience. These structures reveal a profound truth about ancient worldviews. The cosmos was not a distant abstraction. It was the ultimate timekeeper, the governor of planting and harvest, the cue for sacred ceremony. By encoding its rhythms into their most enduring buildings, these cultures did more than track time. They anchored their entire way of life, from agriculture to civic order to spiritual belief, to the perceived pulse of the universe. The proportions here were not just of space but of time. The length of a shadow at noon, the angle of a sunbeam on a specific day, the alignment of a doorway with a rising star, these were the critical equations. This dynamic mathematics created a continuous, living dialogue between human society and the heavens, a reminder that they saw themselves not as separate from nature, but as active participants in a grand, geometrically ordered cosmic cycle. This silent dialogue between architecture and the cosmos reaches a monumental scale in the highlands of Mexico. The ruins of Teotihuacan present a sixth and deeply compelling architectural enigma. Here, geometry was not merely applied to individual buildings, it was the very DNA of the city itself. Walking down the vast Avenue of the Dead, flanked by the staggering masses of the Pyramid of the Sun and the Pyramid of the Moon, you are not just seeing a collection of structures. You are walking through a master plan, a unified geometric vision carved into the landscape over centuries. The precision is breathtaking. The entire city grid is not aligned to true north. Instead, it is rotated 15.5 degrees east. For decades, scholars have debated the reason. One compelling theory points to the heavens, suggesting this orientation aligns with the setting point of the Pleiades star cluster, a celestial marker of profound significance in Mesoamerican cosmology. This was not a random choice of direction. It was a deliberate anchoring of the entire urban fabric to a specific point in the night sky. The geometry continues in the city's colossal centerpiece, the Pyramid of the Sun. Like the Great Pyramid of Giza, it seems to whisper the language of pi. Its base perimeter is nearly equal to the circumference of a circle whose radius is the pyramid's own height. This is a sophisticated geometric play, a correlation that feels too elegant to be mere coincidence. But the most fascinating evidence for a city-wide mathematical code came from the work of researcher Hugh Harleston. He proposed that Teotihuacan was built using a consistent, standard unit of measurement, which he called the Standard Teotihuacan Unit. This unit, roughly equivalent to 83 centimeters, appears again and again. It is found in the spacing of buildings, the dimensions of plazas, and the proportions of the pyramids themselves, often in multiples that suggest a deliberate, modular design. Imagine a master architect or a council of planners working from a single, grand blueprint. They established a fundamental unit, a kind of architectural atom, and then used it to generate the entire city. This implies a level of long-term organization and intellectual sophistication that challenges old narratives about pre-Columbian societies. It suggests a governing body capable of enforcing a unified design principle across generations of builders, ensuring that every new temple, every new platform, would resonate with the same proportional harmony. Teotihuacan stands as a testament to a society that saw urban planning as a sacred act of cosmic ordering, where measurement was not just a tool for construction, but a sacred language for building a mirror of heaven on earth. The same ratios that ordered stone also gave birth to music. This is perhaps the most elegant connection of all, where the silent mathematics of proportion becomes audible. Ancient philosophers from Pythagoras to Plato spoke of the music of the spheres, a profound idea that the planets in their orbits moved according to harmonic ratios, creating a grand, inaudible cosmic symphony. For them, the universe itself was a form of music, and the mathematics of beauty was a single, universal language. This wasn't just poetic metaphor, it was a foundational principle that directly shaped the built world. The simple, whole number ratios that produce the most pleasing musical intervals are precisely the same ratios celebrated in architecture. The perfect octave, where one note vibrates exactly twice as fast as another, is the ratio of 1 to 2. The rich, open sound of a musical fifth is the ratio of 2 to 3. The stable, consonant fourth is 3 to 4. Listen to a chord on a piano, and you are hearing these ancient proportions in action. Now, look at the facade of a Renaissance villa designed by Andrea Palladio. He explicitly used these musical ratios to determine room dimensions, window placements, and the overall harmony of his structures. A room whose length is to its width as 2 is to 3 doesn't just look balanced, it is, in a very real sense, frozen music. The question this raises is haunting. Did cultures long before the Renaissance intuitively grasp this same connection? There is compelling, though speculative, evidence that they designed not just for the eye, but for the ear. Take the king's chamber deep within the Great Pyramid. Its dimensions create a specific resonant frequency. Some acoustical researchers suggest the chamber's granite walls were chosen not only for strength, but for their unique sonic properties, potentially amplifying certain tones or creating a reverberation that could alter a participant's state of consciousness during ritual. While we must be cautious, as definitive proof is elusive across millennia, the idea is powerfully consistent with a holistic ancient worldview. If the cosmos was a symphony, then a temple was an instrument. Its purpose was to tune the human experience to that cosmic vibration. The geometry of the space could enhance ritual chanting, focus collective intention, or create an acoustic environment where sound waves reinforced the sacred geometry of the walls themselves. This transforms our understanding of these spaces. They were not silent tombs or passive backdrops for ceremony. They were active resonators. The goal was to achieve a literal harmony, to make the vibrations of human voice and ritual instrument align with the perceived mathematical vibrations of the universe. In this light, architecture becomes the physical medium for a profound synthesis, where the mathematics of a sound wave and the geometry of a stone chamber are two expressions of one immutable truth. The master builders may have been composing in a language we are only beginning to hear again, a symphony written not in notes but in light, stone, and silent, waiting space. But to see this celestial symphony rendered in stone as a dynamic, moving form, we must travel to the eastern shores of India. There, on the sands of Odisha, stands a seventh architectural enigma, the Sun Temple of Konark. Conceived in the 13th century, this is not merely a temple. It is envisioned as a colossal, cosmic chariot, forever carrying the sun god Surya across the heavens. Its very silhouette is a breathtaking declaration, with 12 pairs of immense, intricately carved stone wheels, pulled by 7 mighty stone horses. At first glance, it is a masterpiece of narrative sculpture, a myth frozen in granite. But a closer look reveals a mind of staggering mathematical and astronomical intent. Each of those 24 wheels is far more than decoration. It is a fully functional, sophisticated sundial. The elaborate spokes are precisely angled, and as the sun journeys across the sky, the shadows they cast fall upon a series of carved markers between the spokes. These markers indicate precise hours and even smaller units of time. The entire temple complex becomes a giant, decentralized clock, where time is not measured by a single shadow, but by a chorus of shadows moving in harmonious, calculated rhythm across dozens of stone discs. This integration of timekeeping is woven into the very fabric of the structure's design. The temple follows the strict proportional canons of the Odisha school, a system where every element, from the base platform to the soaring central tower, is generated from a geometric grid and a set of sacred ratios. The result is a fractal-like harmony. The main sanctum is a colossal form, but look closer, and you see its shape echoed in smaller subsidiary shrines, its rhythms repeated in the patterns of the pillars and the pyramidal roofs. Every part relates to the whole through this silent language of proportion. Yet, the true genius of Konark is how it marries this static geometry with a profound sense of kinetic energy. The alignment of the main temple is precise, allowing the dawn sun to illuminate the inner sanctum. The iconography itself, the galloping horses, the rolling wheels, the god standing majestically within, all are calculated expressions of solar movement. The architecture does not just house a deity, it represents the deity's perpetual motion. It captures a single, eternal moment of that divine chariot's journey, translating cosmic velocity into immutable stone. Here, sacred geometry achieves a new dimension. it is no longer just about balance or alignment or resonance. It becomes about representing dynamism itself, using the perfect, proportional forms of a static monument to tell a story of celestial travel, to make the invisible motion of the sun tangible, and to measure the passage of the very time that the sun god himself governs. The silent language of geometry could not be left to chance. A major question has quietly echoed through our journey. How was this complex knowledge, this intricate code of proportion, transmitted across centuries without a single modern blueprint? The answer lies not in libraries but in the living memory of people. It was carried forward through a robust and guarded oral tradition, passed from master to apprentice in a chain of practical wisdom. In medieval Europe, the master mason was more than a builder. He was the keeper of a sacred craft. The geometric secrets of the guild were protected mysteries, taught not from textbooks but through hands-on demonstration, ritualized practice, and clever mnemonic devices. The unique symbols, the stonemason's marks carved discreetly on cathedral blocks, were likely far more than simple signatures. They may have served as a form of geometric shorthand, a coded reminder of an angle to cut or a proportion to follow, readable only to the initiated. This system of embodied knowledge was incredibly effective, but it was also fragile. When social orders collapsed, when plagues swept through populations, or when new technologies and architectural styles rose to prominence, these delicate chains of transmission could be broken forever. The practical how to build a perfect arch might survive, but the deeper philosophical why behind a specific sacred ratio could fade into obscurity, leaving us with the beautiful artifact but not the full meaning of its design. This is precisely why historians face such a profound challenge in separating deliberate mathematical intent from intuitive genius. For the apprentice who spent a lifetime shaping stone by feel, the correct proportion was not a number on a page. It was a vibration in the hands, a visual balance felt in the bones, a harmony known because it simply looked and felt right. The mathematics was lived, not just calculated. This embodied knowledge suggests that the line between a conscious code and a deep, culturally refined instinct may be far blurrier than we assume. The loss of these oral traditions leaves us with magnificent, silent questions built into the stone itself. That profound integration of geometry with the land finds its most monumental expression not in stone, but in the soil of North America itself. Here, a different kind of architectural genius emerges, one that sculpts the earth on a breathtaking scale. Across the river valleys of the Midwest, ancient Native American cultures created the effigy mounds, massive earthen forms shaped like birds, bears, and most famously, serpents. These are not buildings in any traditional sense, yet they are undeniably architectural, manipulating space and form on a colossal, living canvas. The greatest of these is the Great Serpent Mound in Ohio, an eighth and deeply enigmatic monument. From an aerial view, its power is undeniable, a sinuous, quarter-mile-long earthwork that seems to flow across a ridgetop. Its body undulates in 7 graceful curves before culminating in a tightly coiled tail and an open-mouthed head that appears to hold a giant egg. This is not random landscaping. Its alignment is precise, with the head oriented toward the setting sun on the summer solstice. Some researchers also suggest its curves mirror the stars of the Draco constellation, as it would have appeared thousands of years ago, a terrestrial map of a celestial serpent. But the mystery deepens when we consider its proportions. The length of its coils, the distances between its curves, and the overall relationship of its parts may follow specific, intentional ratios. These proportions are not measured in inches or centimeters, but in human paces and sightlines across the rolling hills. The builders were using the landscape itself as their ruler, creating a form whose harmony is felt when walking its length, a rhythm built into the very wavelength of the earth. This represents a mathematics of a different order, one fully integrated with the living terrain. The mound does not sit upon the land, it is the land reshaped into a sacred symbol. Its purpose remains a subject of thoughtful study, with interpretations ranging from a ceremonial calendar tracking solar and lunar cycles to a powerful representation of spiritual narratives central to the community's worldview. What is clear is that its builders possessed a sophisticated understanding of large-scale geometry and astronomy. They thought in proportions that connected celestial events directly to terrestrial forms, using the horizon as their baseline and the movement of heavenly bodies as their guide. Modern cartography with its satellite imagery is only now allowing us to fully appreciate the precision of these earthworks, revealing how they often form vast, interconnected networks across the landscape. The Serpent Mound challenges our very definition of architecture. It asks us to see the earth not as a foundation to build upon, but as the primary material of construction itself. Here, proportion becomes a dialogue between the human mind, the body of the land, and the cycles of the sky, a silent mathematics written not in quarried stone, but in grass, soil, and the long shadow of a setting sun. This elegant spiral of the Nautilus shell, a form governed by the Fibonacci sequence, feels instinctively beautiful to us. The sequence itself is disarmingly simple. You start with 0 and 1. Each new number is the sum of the two before it, creating the progression 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, and so on, unfolding into infinity. But its power lies in where it appears. It is the hidden architecture of a pinecone's bracts, the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower's face, the branching pattern of a tree. Nature uses this efficient algorithm for packing and growth, creating structures of incredible strength and beauty from a simple, repeating rule. The sequence's most famous visual expression is the Fibonacci spiral, drawn by connecting quarter circles through squares whose side lengths match the numbers in the sequence. This graceful, expanding curve is the very shape of the Nautilus chamber, and when we look back at the artifacts of ancient cultures, we see this same organic curve emerging from human hands. The question is not whether they knew the mathematical formula, which is a medieval invention. The question is whether they saw the pattern in the living world and chose to echo it. The volute, that elegant spiral scroll at the top of an Ionic column on a Greek temple, is a stunning example. It does not perfectly match a mathematical Fibonacci spiral, but its form is unmistakably akin to it, a stone representation of a coiled fern frond or a curling wave. It is nature's growth pattern translated into architectural ornament. We find similar spirals, often called the golden spiral, in the decorative motifs of Celtic stonework and in the layout of certain ancient ceremonial sites, where pathways or stone arrangements seem to unwind in this logarithmic progression. Even the grand ramps theorized for the construction of the Great Pyramid, if designed as a continuous ascending path around its faces, would trace a giant pyramidal version of this same expanding curve. This is where the line between invention and recognition beautifully blurs. The artisan shaping the volute was likely not calculating ratios. He was replicating a form he found pleasing, a form he saw in seashells collected from the shore or in the unfolding leaves of a plant. He was, in essence, using an algorithm observed from the natural world. His craft was a form of biomimicry long before the word existed. The mathematics was already there, written in the petals of a flower. The human achievement was in seeing that silent code, understanding its inherent harmony, and consciously choosing to make it a permanent feature of their sacred and civic spaces. This transforms our understanding of their process. It suggests that the sacred geometry of their temples was not a separate, esoteric knowledge divorced from daily life. It was an extension of the same careful observation they applied to farming, to navigation, to understanding the seasons. The beauty they sought to capture in stone was the very beauty that sustained their world. By adopting nature's most efficient and graceful algorithms, they were aligning human creation with a deeper, universal principle of order. Their art and architecture became a bridge connecting the crafted world to the wild, intelligent patterns of the living earth. Beneath the waves off the coast of Japan lies a mystery that tests the very definition of architecture. The Yonaguni Monument, a series of massive sandstone formations resting on the seafloor, presents a ninth and deeply controversial enigma. To some explorers, these are not random rocks. They see what appear to be vast, flat platforms with sharp, 90-degree edges. They identify what look like straight, parallel channels cut into the stone and towering structures that resemble stepped pyramids or terraces. The overall impression is one of deliberate geometric design, of proportion and intention carved into the bedrock itself. If human hands shaped this place, it would rewrite history. It would suggest a prehistoric culture, now lost to time, with the capability for monumental stonework and sophisticated planning on a scale to rival known ancient civilizations. A culture whose world was swallowed by rising seas at the end of the last ice age. The implications are staggering, pointing to a forgotten chapter in humanity's relationship with geometry and the land. Yet, the scientific consensus offers a very different, equally fascinating explanation. Geologists who have studied the site point to the natural properties of the sandstone itself. This region is seismically active, and the bedrock is crisscrossed with natural horizontal and vertical fractures. Over millennia, the powerful ocean currents have relentlessly eroded along these lines of weakness, scouring out channels and causing slabs to shear off, often creating remarkably straight edges and flat surfaces. The stacked, terraced appearance could be the result of different layers of rock eroding at different rates. What we perceive as architecture, they argue, is a spectacular example of nature's own sculpting power, a masterpiece of geological chance. This standoff is far more than an academic debate. It forces us to confront the limits of our own perception in the search for ancient mathematics. Our journey has shown how the human mind is exquisitely tuned to seek out pattern, proportion, and intention. It is how we recognized the golden ratio in a seashell and then built it into a temple. But this same powerful instinct can sometimes see signals where only noise exists. Yonaguni serves as a profound cautionary tale. It reminds us that the quest for lost knowledge requires a delicate balance, a dance between open-minded wonder and rigorous, evidence-based skepticism. We must be willing to ask the thrilling question, what if this is a message from a lost world? But we must also have the discipline to listen to the quieter answers offered by the natural world itself. Whether a sunken city or a natural marvel, the monument's true lesson may be about us. It reveals our deep, enduring need to find meaning in the shapes of the world, to see the echo of our own creative spirit, even in the silent, patient work of stone and sea. The silent language was never truly lost. It merely waited, sleeping in the ruins of Rome and the pages of forgotten manuscripts, for a new generation of minds to learn its grammar once more. That awakening came with the Renaissance, a period that looked back to antiquity not as a distant myth, but as a direct ancestor. Thinkers and artists became detectives, scouring the physical remnants of ancient Rome with a new purpose, to decode the principles that made those ruins so profoundly beautiful. The architect and scholar Leon Battista Alberti was one of these pivotal figures. In his groundbreaking treatise, De Reedificatoria, he didn't just describe how to build, he explained why certain buildings felt harmonious. He systematically argued that beauty was not a vague mystery, but an objective result of correct proportion, a mathematical law that could be recovered from the ancient world and applied anew. This was a revolutionary idea, beauty as a science, and no image captures this fusion of art, science, and the human form more perfectly than Leonardo da Vinci's Vitruvian Man. That iconic drawing is far more than a man in a circle and square. It is a visual manifesto. Leonardo was illustrating the ideas of the ancient Roman architect Vitruvius, who proposed that the perfectly proportioned human body could be used as the blueprint for a perfectly proportioned temple. Here was the ultimate analogy, the microcosm and the macrocosm linked by geometry. The navel as the center of a circle, the fingertips defining a square, these were the sacred ratios made flesh. This intellectual revival had immediate, breathtaking consequences in stone. Filippo Brunelleschi, studying the Pantheon's dome in Rome, used its proportional principles to engineer the magnificent dome of the Florence Cathedral, a feat that defined a city's skyline. Later, Andrea Palladio would design villas and churches using strict musical ratios, creating spaces that felt serene and eternally balanced because their dimensions literally harmonized like a chord. The pursuit had been explicitly recovered, systematized, and was now building a new world. This thread of inquiry stretches unbroken into our own era. In the 20th century, the architect Le Corbusier looked at the machine age and asked a timeless question: could there still be a universal standard for beauty? His answer was the modular, a modern take on Vitruvius. He created a proportional system based on the dimensions of a 6-foot human figure, but then scaled those dimensions using the golden ratio and the Fibonacci sequence. He envisioned this as a tool for everything from designing a chair to planning an entire city, a single mathematical key to human-centered design. The arc from Alberti's studies to Le Corbusier's diagrams reveals something profound. The connection between architecture and the mathematics of nature is not a singular secret lost to time. It is a perennial human pursuit. It is a deep-seated instinct that gets covered over by the pragmatics of an age, only to be rediscovered, re-examined, and reinvented when a culture pauses to ask the fundamental question: what makes our world not just functional but truly meaningful? Each rediscovery is not a repetition, but a conversation across the centuries, where every generation adds its own voice to an ongoing dialogue about harmony, order, and our place within a patterned cosmos. Yet this conversation across centuries finds perhaps its most complete and breathtaking synthesis not in Europe, but on a volcanic plain in central Java. Rising from the lush greenery like a stepped mountain of grey stone, Borobudur stands as a 10th and profoundly intricate architectural enigma. This is not a temple with interior rooms. It is a colossal, three-dimensional mandala, a spiritual diagram you do not merely look at, but physically enter and ascend. Its design is a masterwork of intentional proportion, every element a deliberate symbol in stone. The structure unfolds in 9 stacked platforms, 6 square terraces crowned by 3 circular ones, mirroring the Buddhist conception of the cosmos. The square levels below represent the world of form, the realm of desire and suffering. The circular terraces above symbolize the formless world, a state of increasing purity approaching enlightenment. This vertical journey is not a casual climb. It is a prescribed ritual path over 3 miles long, a clockwise circumambulation that guides the pilgrim past 2,672 intricately carved relief panels and 504 seated Buddha statues. Each number is significant, often multiples of sacred Buddhist figures. The path forces a slow, contemplative pace. As you walk, the high walls of the lower square terraces block the outside world, focusing your attention inward on the carved stories of the Buddha's past lives and teachings. Then, as you ascend to the higher, more open circular terraces, the world opens up again, but in a new way. Here, you are surrounded by 72 perforated stupas, each housing a statue of the Buddha inside a latticed stone bell. The geometry shifts from the rigid, earthly square to the infinite, celestial circle. The final, central stupa at the very summit is empty, or perhaps full of everything, representing the ultimate state of nirvana, beyond form altogether. The genius of Borobudur is that its sacred mathematics are not hidden. They are the path itself. The proportions of each tier, the precise count of statues and panels, the very experience of moving from enclosed square to open circle, all are calculated to produce a specific transformation in the pilgrim. The architecture is the meditation manual. Your body, tracing the measured path, becomes the instrument of understanding. The andesite stone holds the doctrine, not in written words, but in spatial sequence and number. To walk Borobudur is to move through a functioning spiritual equation, where every step, every turn, every vista is part of a grand geometric algorithm for awakening. Here, the fusion is absolute. The mathematics are the theology, the proportions are the path, and the path, carved by 8th century masters, remains a silent, stunning invitation to walk the geometry of enlightenment. Yet this breathtaking synthesis of number and form invites a necessary and grounding question. Were these ancient builders deliberate mathematicians, or are we, with our modern obsession for patterns, seeing codes where none exist? This is the skeptic's perspective, and it is not a dismissal, but a crucial layer of understanding. Many historians and archaeologists urge caution against what they call number juggling, the retroactive imposition of sophisticated modern mathematics onto structures where simpler, more human explanations are at hand. Take the Great Pyramid slope. The specific angle could very well be the most stable, practical angle for stacking massive limestone blocks, a function of simple physics and trial and error, rather than a deliberate encoding of pi. Look at the Parthenon's columns, their subtle curvature and slight lean, creating that famous sense of perfect harmony, might be brilliant optical corrections. A builder, noticing that perfectly straight lines can appear to sag from a distance, might have gently curved them to look straight, a solution born from the eye and the hand, not from a pre-calculated formula for phi. In many cases, the driving force was likely profound symbolism. A square base represented the stable earth, a circular dome mirrored the vault of heaven. The form served the story, the myth, the ritual need. The beautiful mathematical harmony we detect could have been a secondary benefit, an emergent property of a culture deeply attuned to visual balance and cosmic order. This viewpoint doesn't diminish the wonder of these places. If anything, it enriches it. It grounds these monuments in the reality of human experience. It suggests that ancient genius was not a single, monolithic intelligence, but a multifaceted brilliance. It was the practical engineer solving a weight problem, the artist refining a line until it felt eternally right, the priest ensuring the temple told a sacred story, and the philosopher contemplating the shape of the cosmos. All these minds worked together, and from that collaboration emerged structures where function, symbol, and an intuitive grasp of natural proportion became indistinguishable. The skeptic reminds us that the silent language we are trying to hear was not spoken in equations alone, but in the scrape of a chisel, the squint of an eye against the sun, and the deep, shared stories of what the world meant. Our challenge is to listen to all of it without letting our own desire for a neat mathematical secret drown out the quieter, equally profound voices of craft, symbol, and lived wisdom. But how do we move from admiring these patterns to truly understanding them? The modern quest to decipher this ancient code is no longer limited to a tape measure and a notebook. Today, researchers wield a suite of technologies that would seem like pure magic to the original builders. High-resolution photogrammetry and three-dimensional laser scanning can capture every curve and angle of a monument, creating a digital twin with millimeter precision. This isn't just a picture, it's a perfect, measurable replica existing in a computer. With this model, powerful software can then run thousands of mathematical tests, searching for proportional relationships between any 2 points, any 2 surfaces. It can ask and answer questions a human could never calculate by hand. Did the builders use the golden ratio here? Does the floor plan align with a Fibonacci spiral? The software can test every hypothesis with cold, impartial speed, Similarly, the field of archaeoastronomy has been revolutionized. Instead of rough estimations, specialists now use advanced celestial simulation software. They can rewind the sky with astonishing accuracy, showing exactly which star or solstice sun would have been framed by a specific doorway 2,000, 5,000, even 10,000 years ago. This technological leap has transformed the study from a realm of intriguing speculation into a rigorous, data-driven science. We are no longer just guessing at alignments, we are proving them. Yet, this incredible power brings its own profound challenge. With a dataset of millions of precise points and the ability to test against every known mathematical constant from pi to phi to the square root of 5, you are almost guaranteed to find some seemingly perfect correlations. The real task becomes distinguishing meaningful signal from random noise. The key lies in statistical significance and historical plausibility. Does a proposed ratio appear repeatedly and consistently across the structure, governing major elements like overall height and width? Does it align with what we know of the builder's own recorded knowledge or symbolic systems? A single, curious measurement might be coincidence. A network of them, woven into the fabric of the design, begins to look like a language. The work of digital reconstruction pioneers like Jean-Claude Galvin helps bridge this gap. By using all available archaeological data, they rebuild ancient sites as they originally appeared. With a digital brush, they strip away centuries of erosion, collapse, and later additions. Suddenly, the Parthenon's columns stand straight and bright once more, or the Roman Forum regains its intended geometric clarity. This allows us to see the architect's pure vision, to experience the proportions as they were meant to be experienced before time softened the edges. It is in this pristine, virtual space that the silent mathematics often speaks the loudest, revealing an intention that has been waiting in the ruins quietly for our tools to become sophisticated enough to listen. The silent mathematics of proportion achieves its most monumental and mysterious expression not by reaching upward, but by being drawn across the earth itself. On the arid plains of southern Peru, the Nazca lines present an 11th architectural enigma, a form of design that redefines scale entirely. Here, architecture becomes geoglyph and the canvas is the desert floor. These are not structures you can enter or touch. They are colossal drawings etched into the dark surface of the pampa by removing the sun-baked pebbles to reveal the lighter earth beneath. The figures are staggering in their scope, ranging from perfectly straight lines that run for kilometers to immense geometric shapes, trapezoids and triangles that stretch across the horizon, to intricate depictions of a hummingbird, a spider, and a monkey, each hundreds of feet long. Their true form and breathtaking harmony are invisible from the ground, only revealing themselves as coherent, proportional images when viewed from the air. This fact alone poses a profound puzzle. How, and more importantly why, would a culture create art of such precision for a perspective they could never physically witness? The answer lies in a sophisticated understanding of scale and geometry applied to the landscape itself. Creating a straight line over 5 kilometers on rough terrain is not a matter of simply walking in a direction. It required advanced surveying techniques, likely using a series of stakes and sighting poles to maintain a perfectly straight bearing across rolling hills. The scaling up of a complex figure like a spiral or a bird from a small model to a giant earthwork demanded a proportional system, a method for transferring a set of harmonious relationships onto a grid measured in human paces. The geometric precision of the trapezoids, with their parallel sides and clean angles, speaks to a community capable of collective, large-scale planning and execution over generations. The purpose of these lines remains one of archaeology's great debates. Were they ritual pathways walked during ceremonies, their long straight channels serving as sacred processional routes? Could they function as a giant astronomical calendar, with certain lines pointing to solstice sunrises or significant star groups on the horizon. A compelling theory suggests they were part of a water cult, with the shapes and lines mapping underground aquifers in a region where water was life itself. While their exact meaning may be lost, their geometric language is not. The Nazca lines demonstrate that proportional thinking could be liberated from the vertical dimension of temples and pyramids. It could be laid flat, transforming an entire valley into a work of sacred art. This suggests a conceptual mastery that transcends physical perspective. The makers may have been creating these forms not for human eyes, but as offerings to deities who viewed the world from above, or as permanent inscriptions meant to communicate with the cosmos itself. The lines are a silent mathematics written on a planetary scale, a reminder that the drive to impose harmonic order on the world could manifest not just in what we build up, but in what we draw across the very skin of the earth. The blueprint for this entire silent geometry may have been with us all along. It is written in the very architecture of the human form. The Roman architect Vitruvius, writing in the 1st century before the Common Era, made a radical proposition. He argued that a sacred temple should derive its proportions from the proportions of a perfectly shaped human body. This was not a vague artistic suggestion, but a detailed architectural principle. He described how a well-formed man with arms and legs extended could be made to fit inside both a perfect circle and a perfect square. The navel, he noted, would be the center of the circle, while the fingertips and heels would define the square. This single, powerful image, later brought to breathtaking life by Leonardo da Vinci centuries later, contains a universe of meaning. It proposes that the human form is itself a condensed model of cosmic geometry, a living repository of the same ratios that govern the heavens and the natural world. Therefore, to build a space that feels divinely harmonious, you simply scale up the proportions you find in yourself. This anthropometric thinking, using the body as a measure, was a global phenomenon. In ancient Egypt, the fundamental unit of construction was the royal cubit, a length based on the distance from the elbow to the tip of the middle finger. Master builders carried physical rods of this measurement, ensuring every stone in a pyramid resonated with a human scale. In the temple traditions of India, the system of Tola used the width of a hand or the length of a face as a modular unit to generate the entire elevation of a shrine from base to spire. Even the classical orders of Greek architecture carried this embodied symbolism. The sturdy, fluted Doric column was said to mirror the proportions and strength of a man, while the more slender, scroll-topped Ionic column was likened to the graceful form of a woman. This pervasive practice points to a profound philosophical bedrock. It reflects the ancient concept of the microcosm and macrocosm, the idea that the human being is a little world that contains, in miniature, all the elements and harmonies of the great world. If we are a reflection of the cosmos, then our dwellings, and especially our temples, should be reflections of us. This creates a powerful resonance. Entering a space built on human proportions feels intuitively right, familiar, and calming because it echoes the body we inhabit. It grounds the most abstract celestial mathematics in the most intimate reference point we possess, our own flesh and bone. In this light, the quest for sacred geometry becomes a homecoming, an attempt to build a world outside that feels as harmoniously ordered as the one we carry within. This modular logic of geometry reached its ultimate expression in the organization of human society itself. Roman urban planning stands as a 12th architectural enigma, where the silent mathematics of proportion was used not to reach for the heavens, but to order life on earth with breathtaking rationality. Across a vast empire, from the windswept hills of Britain to the deserts of North Africa, Roman engineers imposed a single, scalable geometric vision upon the landscape. This system, known as centuriation, began with the division of land into a perfect grid of large squares. At the heart of this grid, two principal roads were laid with unwavering precision, the Cardo Maximus running north to south and the Decumanus Maximus running east to west. Their intersection was more than a crossroads, it was the civic and spiritual center of the entire community. Here, in the shadow of this geometric anchor point, the Forum would rise, a public square surrounded by the most important buildings, the Basilica for Law and Commerce, the Capitolium Temple dedicated to the gods, and the Curia for governance. This was not a casual arrangement. It was a deliberate act of cosmic ordering, a way of aligning the human settlement with the four cardinal directions, mirroring the perceived order of the universe in the very streets where people lived and worked. The system's genius was its modularity. Each large square of the centuriation grid could be subdivided into smaller, proportional plots for housing, shops, and workshops. Public spaces like baths and theaters were allocated specific, standardized footprints within this master plan. This ensured an incredible efficiency and a rapid, repeatable method for founding new cities, known as coloniae, often to settle retired legionaries. A veteran arriving in a newly built town like Timgad in modern-day Algeria, or in the orderly grid of a permanent military camp, would immediately know his way around. The proportions of the forum, the width of the streets, the size of the insulae or city blocks, all followed familiar patterns. This created a powerful sense of Roman identity, a visual and spatial harmony that made a citizen feel at home anywhere the empire held sway. The application of geometry here transcended aesthetics or symbolism. It became a tool for social engineering and administrative control. A rationally planned city was easier to govern, to tax, to defend, and to supply. It represented the belief that human flourishing depended on a rational, orderly environment, one built upon the same principles of balance and proportion found in nature. The Roman grid shows us the ultimate scalability of this ancient code. It could shape a single column, inspire an entire temple, and finally, structure the sprawling complexity of urban life. In the straight lines of a Roman street, we see the silent mathematics made manifest as civic order, a grand attempt to build a world where human society itself reflected the harmonious proportions of the cosmos it sought to understand. So many threads from so many corners of the world lead us to a single, compelling crossroads. Can we weave them together into a unified theory of ancient design? Perhaps not a single, secret blueprint passed between continents, but something even more profound, a recurring human impulse so fundamental it feels like a law of culture itself. Across deserts, jungles, and mountain ranges separated by oceans and millennia, our ancestors demonstrated a shared drive to create order from chaos by mirroring the perceived order of the cosmos. This is the grand pattern behind the patterns. In Greece, they called it the Golden Section and built it into the Parthenon. In India, they mapped it as a mandala and generated temples from its grid. On the plains of Britain, they set it in stone to track the sun and moon. These are not the same technique, but they are different dialects of the same silent geometric language. The common ground is a deep-seated belief that aligning human creations with cosmic patterns, whether numerical, astronomical, or drawn from the living world, imbued those creations with power, stability, and sacred meaning. A pyramid aligned to the stars wasn't just a tomb, it was a conduit. A cathedral built with musical ratios wasn't just a church, it was a resonant chamber for the soul. This practice transcends what we might dismiss as mere superstition. Look closer, and it reveals an early, intuitive form of systems thinking. These master builders were astute observers of their world. They saw that the strongest tree follows a branching pattern, that the most efficient packing of seeds follows a spiral, that the most stable arch derives from a semicircle. They recognized, perhaps without our modern vocabulary, that the most enduring and beautiful forms in nature obey an inherent mathematical logic. Their genius was in the emulation. By consciously adopting those same rules, those same proportions, they were not just decorating their world, they were tapping into a source of resilience and harmony that predated humanity itself. Their goal was to build things that would last, not just physically but culturally and spiritually, to construct a city, a temple, or a monument that felt right, that felt connected, that felt meaningfully anchored in the grand scheme of things. This unifying impulse suggests that the silent mathematics we've been tracing is more than an architectural style. It is a philosophical stance, a way of being in the world that seeks integration over separation. It is the desire to make our mark on the earth not as an act of dominance, but as an act of resonance, a careful tuning of the human project to the ancient, intelligent frequencies of the universe. Our journey through these silent stones offers a stunning truth. Our ancestors were not merely builders, they were philosophers of space and number. From the pyramids of Giza to the pagodas of Asia, they consistently embedded the mathematics of natural proportions into their most sacred spaces. This practice served as a profound bridge, a tangible connection between the earthly realm they inhabited and the eternal order they perceived in the stars, the seasons, and the growth of a leaf. The scholarly debate will rightly continue, weighing deliberate code against intuitive genius, practical necessity against symbolic intent. Yet the sheer cumulative weight of the evidence, gathered from every continent and across millennia, points irresistibly toward a deep, widespread, and sophisticated engagement with geometric harmony. This shared legacy now challenges us to look at old stones with entirely new eyes. We are invited to see them not as inert ruins, but as active pages in a global, unspoken textbook of cosmic mathematics, each monument a chapter in humanity's long attempt to read the universe. Let this exploration be more than a history lesson. Let it inspire you to become an observer of the silent patterns in your own world. Notice the spiral of a pine cone on a walk, the logarithmic curve of a seashell at the beach, or the subtle proportions in the facade of an old building in your town. These are echoes of the same language. The conversation between humanity and the mathematical architecture of reality is ancient, far older than our written records, and it is a conversation we are all still part of today. If this perspective has shifted how you see the fingerprints of history in the world around you, we would love to hear your thoughts. Share them below, and consider subscribing to join us as we continue investigating the world's most enduring mysteries, one silent stone at a time.